3 days after the battle, High Counselor Thera stood in the ruins of what had been the Vorthak Command bioship. Human engineers had carved a path through the dead creature's hull, allowing Zephyrian scientists to study the remains. What they found inside defied comprehension. The bioship was not just a vessel, it was an entire ecosystem. Living corridors pulsed with what might have been blood or data. Organic computers the size of buildings had processed information for the hive mind. And everywhere there were weapons that could have destroyed entire planets. Incredible, Dr. Neva whispered, running her scanner over a wall of living tissue. This creature could have lived for thousands of years. It was not just a ship. It was a mobile civilization. Thera nodded, but her attention was focused on the human engineer working beside them. Commander Torres had been explaining the bioship systems with casual expertise, as if humans fought creatures like this every day. The neural network is the key, Torres was saying. Once you disrupt the central processing core, the entire organism shuts down. We have seen similar designs before. Before? Thera asked. Humans have fought the Vorthaks previously? Torres shook his head. Not the Vorthaks specifically, but we have encountered other hive mind species. The collective of Kepler 442, the unity of the outer spiral, the machine consciousness of the void. Dr. Neva looked up from her scanner in shock. Those are just stories, legends. No one has proof that those species ever existed. We have proof, Torres replied calmly. We fought them. We won. The silence that followed was deafening. Thera felt a chill run through her as she realized what Torres was saying. For 2.5 centuries, while the rest of the galaxy enjoyed peace, humans had been fighting wars against enemies that other species thought were myths. How many? Thera asked quietly. How many what? How many species have you fought? Torres considered the question. In the last 2 centuries? Maybe 30 or 40 major conflicts, hundreds of smaller ones. It is hard to keep track. Thera stared at him. 30 or 40 species. The Zephyrian Confederation had never fought anyone. Most galactic civilizations had been at peace for generations. But humans had been waging constant war in the dark spaces between the stars. Why? She asked. Why do you keep fighting? Torres looked genuinely confused by the question. Because someone has to. The galaxy is full of threats that most species prefer to ignore. Hive minds, machine intelligences, cosmic parasites, reality devourers. They exist in the empty spaces, growing stronger while everyone else pretends they are not there. But why humans? Why not the Galactic Council? Why not the major powers? Because, Torres said with a slight smile, other species fight to survive. Humans fight to win. There is a difference. Later that day, Thera received a priority communication from the Galactic Council. The emergency session included representatives from every major civilization. Their faces on the holographic display showed a mixture of fear, confusion, and barely controlled panic. Counselor Thera, Chairman Voss began. We need to understand what happened in your system. Our long-range sensors detected energy signatures unlike anything in our databases. The humans saved us, Thera replied simply. They destroyed the Vorthak swarm completely. Yes, we know that, Voss said impatiently. What we need to know is how, and more importantly, what their intentions are now. Thera understood the concern. The Sol quarantine zone had been the galaxy's way of containing humanity's violent tendencies. But the quarantine was clearly broken now. Human ships were operating freely in galactic space and no one knew what they planned to do next. Have you spoken with their leadership? Asked Ambassador Crix of the Centauri Republic. I have been in contact with Admiral Chen, Thera replied. She has been very cooperative. What are their demands? Chairman Voss asked. Territory? Resources? Tribute? Thera hesitated. This was the part that no one would believe. They have made no demands. They are not asking for anything in return for their help. The silence that followed was telling. Every representative on the call was struggling to understand this concept. In galactic politics, nothing was ever done without expecting something in return. Nothing? Ambassador Crix pressed. No trade agreements? No territorial concessions? No political influence? Nothing, Thera confirmed. Admiral Chen said they answered our call because that is what civilized species do for each other. Another silence. Then Chairman Voss leaned forward. Counselor Thera, we need you to understand something. The human fleet that saved your worlds is larger than most national navies. Their technology is centuries ahead of anything we have seen. If they wanted to conquer the galaxy, no one could stop them. Then why have they not tried? Thera asked. It was a simple question, but it cut to the heart of everyone's fears. The humans had the power to dominate galactic civilization, but they showed no interest in doing so. It made them unpredictable, and unpredictable powers were dangerous. We need to re-establish diplomatic contact, Chairman Voss decided. The quarantine zone protocols are clearly obsolete. We need new agreements, new boundaries, new understandings. Good luck with that, Thera said quietly. What do you mean? Admiral Chen told me that humanity is officially dissolving the Sol quarantine zone. They consider it to be an illegal restriction on their freedom of movement. They will no longer recognize any attempt to contain them. The panic on the council members' faces was visible even through the holographic display. The quarantine zone had been their safety net, their way of sleeping peacefully at night. Without it, humans could go anywhere, do anything. What are their intentions? Ambassador Crix asked desperately. From what I understand, Thera replied, they plan to continue doing what they have been doing for the last 2 centuries, fighting threats that endanger galactic civilization. Threats that we do not even know exist, Chairman Voss muttered. Exactly, Thera said. According to Commander Torres, there are dozens of hostile species operating in the empty spaces between our territories. Machine consciousnesses, hive minds, reality parasites. The humans have been fighting them alone. The implications were staggering. While the major galactic powers had been focused on trade and diplomacy, humanity had been serving as an unofficial guardian force, protecting everyone from threats they did not even know existed. Why? Chairman Voss asked. Why would they do this without telling anyone? Thera thought about her conversations with Admiral Chen and Commander Torres. She remembered the casual way they had discussed fighting impossible enemies. She thought about human ships ramming bioships 3 times their size while playing war music. Because, she said finally, they enjoy it. The call ended in stunned silence. Across the galaxy, military leaders and political figures tried to process what they had learned. Humanity was back in galactic civilization, and they were nothing like anyone had expected. Over the following weeks, reports began filtering in from across the galaxy. Human ships were appearing in dozens of systems, not as conquerors or invaders, but as protectors. They hunted down pirates that had plagued trade routes for decades. They destroyed automated weapon platforms left behind by extinct civilizations. They fought creatures in the deep void that most species did not even have names for. They asked for nothing in return except the right to continue their self-appointed mission. The final message came directly from Earth itself, broadcast on all galactic frequencies. Admiral Chen appeared on screens throughout civilized space, her image transmitted from the legendary Sol system. Citizens of the galaxy, she began. This is Admiral Sarah Chen of the Terran Defense Force. After 2.5 centuries of isolation, humanity is returning to galactic civilization. We are not here to conquer or control. We are here to protect. She paused, and her expression became more serious. For too long, the galaxy has ignored the threats that exist in the dark spaces between the stars. Hostile machine intelligences, parasitic organisms, reality-devouring entities. They grow stronger while you pretend they do not exist. Humanity will no longer allow this willful ignorance to continue. Her voice became harder, more determined. We are dissolving the Sol quarantine zone. Human ships will patrol wherever they are needed. We will fight whatever enemies we encounter. We ask nothing from you except that you stay out of our way. The transmission ended with coordinates for Earth's new diplomatic channels and a final warning that sent chills through every military commander in the galaxy. Any species that threatens galactic civilization will face humanity's response. We suggest you update your threat assessments accordingly. High Counselor Thera sat in her office on Zephyr Prime, looking out at the peaceful streets of her capital city. Children played in the parks while their parents went about their daily lives safe and secure, because humans had answered a desperate call for help. She thought about Admiral Chen's words and smiled. The galaxy had spent centuries fearing humanity's return, but now that they were back, Thera found herself hoping they would stay. Because somewhere in the dark spaces between the stars, things were hunting that no one else was brave enough to fight. And now, for the first time in galactic history, something was hunting them back. The most feared species in the galaxy had returned, and they had reminded everyone why they had earned that title. Captain Elena Vasquez stood on the bridge of the UES Endeavor, staring at the view screen in stunned silence. What she saw there defied everything humanity thought they knew about space. Where there should have been empty void, massive structures drifted like ghost ships among scattered asteroids. The largest derelict was the size of a city. Its hull was torn open, revealing corridors wide enough to fly shuttles through. Strange symbols covered its surface, etched in materials that gleamed despite obvious battle damage. Smaller craft, each one larger than Earth's biggest aircraft carriers, floated nearby like lost children. "Captain," said Lieutenant Chen from the sensor station, "I'm reading 17 distinct ship designs. The metal compositions don't match anything in our databases. Some of these alloys shouldn't even be possible according to our physics." Elena nodded slowly. 3 months ago, humanity had achieved its first faster-than-light jump. The Endeavour was Earth's first deep space exploration vessel, sent to investigate nearby star systems and search for signs of life. They had expected to find empty space or maybe some primitive microorganisms. They had not expected to find a graveyard. "How old are these wrecks?" Elena asked. "Hard to say, Captain. There's no radiation decay that I can measure. Whatever did this happened recently. Maybe within the last 50 years. But that's impossible. These ships use technology centuries ahead of ours." Dr. Sarah Kim, the mission's xenobiologist, looked up from her station. "Captain, I'm detecting organic material inside several of the wrecks. It might be preserved remains." Elena felt a chill run down her spine. "Remains of what?" "Unknown. But whatever lived on these ships, they were definitely not human." The bridge fell silent except for the soft humming of the ship's systems. Elena had prepared for many possibilities during this mission. She had imagined finding new worlds, new resources, maybe even simple alien life. She had never imagined finding evidence of a space battle involving technologies that made Earth's most advanced weapons look like stone tools. "Take us closer to the largest wreck," Elena ordered, "but keep the engines warm. If there's any sign of danger, we leave immediately." As the Endeavour approached the massive derelict, more details became visible. The ship had been beautiful once. Its design suggested grace and speed, with flowing lines that seemed almost organic. Now it was broken, its hull split open like a flower, revealing the devastation within. "Captain," Lieutenant Martinez called from communications. "I'm picking up a faint signal. It's coming from one of the smaller ships." Elena's heart skipped a beat. "A signal? What kind of signal?" "It's very weak, but it appears to be some kind of distress beacon. The pattern suggests it's artificial, not natural phenomena." Elena looked around her bridge crew. They were all young, all volunteers who had dreamed of exploring the stars. None of them had expected their first alien contact to happen in a battlefield graveyard. "Can you pinpoint the source?" "Yes, Captain. It's coming from a ship about 2 kilometers off our starboard bow. The vessel appears to be partially intact." Elena studied the ship on the view screen. It was smaller than the others, roughly the size of Earth's space stations. Its hull showed damage, but it wasn't completely destroyed. Lights flickered weakly along its surface. "Dr. Kim, any signs of life aboard that vessel?" The xenobiologist worked at her console for several minutes. "I'm detecting very faint biosigns. Whatever's on that ship, it's barely alive." Elena made a decision that would change the course of human history. "Prepare a shuttle. We're going aboard." "Captain," Lieutenant Chen protested. "That could be extremely dangerous. We don't know anything about these aliens or their technology." "They're dying," Elena replied simply. "If we can help, we have to try." 2 hours later, Elena found herself in an EVA suit floating through the corridors of an alien spacecraft. The artificial gravity was working, but weakly. The air was thin and filled with strange chemical traces that her suit's filters were working overtime to process. Dr. Kim and 2 security officers accompanied her. They moved carefully through corridors designed for beings much taller than humans. Strange symbols covered the walls, along with what appeared to be artwork depicting scenes of space and strange, beautiful worlds. They found the survivors in what appeared to be the ship's medical bay. 3 alien beings lay on raised platforms connected to machines that beeped weakly. They were tall and thin with blue-scaled skin and large, dark eyes. One of them stirred as the humans entered. The alien tried to speak, making sounds like wind through water. Dr. Kim activated her translation device, a prototype designed to learn new languages through pattern recognition. After several minutes of listening, the device began producing rough translations. "Strangers. From where do you come? Are you the ones who ended the war?" Elena stepped forward, speaking slowly. We are humans from a world called Earth. We mean no harm. You are injured. Can we help you? The alien's large eyes widened. Humans never heard this word. You are not of the five powers? Not Zephyrian, not Crystalline, not Vorthak, not Syndicate, not Federation? No, Elena said. We don't know what those words mean. We are new to space. We have never met other intelligent life before. The alien tried to sit up, wincing in pain. I am Navigator Zixhai of the Zephyrian Border Fleet. My ship, damaged in battle with crystalline forces. We have been drifting here for many cycles. Over the next several hours, as Dr. Kim worked to treat the alien's injuries with medical supplies from the Endeavor, Zixhai told them about the galaxy. Elena listened in growing amazement as the navigator described 5 great powers that had fought a war lasting 3 centuries. Hundreds of star systems had been destroyed. Billions of beings had died. The war had only recently ended in exhaustion and mutual destruction. Your ship, Zixhai said, examining images of the Endeavor on Elena's tablet. It is primitive but functional. How do you travel between stars without quantum drives? Elena explained humanity's crude faster-than-light technology. Zixhai listened with growing interest. Remarkable. Your species developed this independently, without guidance from the precursors? What are precursors? Elena asked. The ones who came before. They left technology throughout the galaxy, but they vanished long ago. All spacefaring races found their first star drives in precursor ruins. You are the first to develop such technology alone. As Zixhai grew stronger under Dr. Kim's treatment, he shared more about the galaxy. Elena learned about the neutral zones, the monitoring stations, the fragile peace that held the powers apart. She learned about the hundreds of smaller species that had been caught between the great powers, many of them nearly extinct. You must turn back, Zixhai warned. The galaxy is dangerous for new species. The 5 powers maintain strict control over their territories. Any unknown presence might restart the war. Elena considered this carefully. The smart thing would be to return to Earth immediately and warn humanity to stay hidden. They were completely outmatched by the technology and military power of these galactic civilizations. But as she looked at Zixhai and his injured companions, Elena remembered why she had joined the space program. It wasn't just to explore. It was to help make a better future. What if we don't want to hide? She asked. What if we want to help? Zixhai stared at her with his large, dark eyes. Help? Help whom? Everyone, Elena said simply. You told us about species that are suffering, that are nearly extinct. You told us about refugees and forgotten worlds. What if there was a way to help them? The 5 powers would never allow it. They control everything. Elena smiled, thinking of Earth's history of impossible victories and stubborn hope. Maybe they don't have to allow it. Maybe someone just needs to try. Zixhai was quiet for a long moment. Finally he spoke. Your species. You are very strange. Most intelligent races learn caution quickly. It is necessary for survival in the galaxy. Maybe, Elena said. Or maybe the galaxy needs someone who hasn't learned to be afraid yet. She made another decision that would echo through history. Zixhai, would you be willing to come with us? To help us understand this galaxy and maybe find a way to make it better? The Zephyrian navigator looked at his healing wounds, then at his dying ship, then at the wreckage of the great battle that surrounded them. When he looked back at Elena, something new flickered in his ancient eyes. Yes, he said quietly. Yes, I think I would like to see what happens when humans arrive in strength. The emergency session of the United Earth Coalition had been going on for 18 hours straight. Representatives from every nation sat around the massive circular table in Geneva, their faces showing a mixture of excitement, fear, and determination. At the center of the table, a holographic display showed images from the Endeavor's mission. Secretary General Maria Santos stood at the podium, her voice steady despite the magnitude of what she was announcing. Ladies and gentlemen, the evidence is clear. We are not alone in the universe. More importantly, we have been invited to participate in galactic civilization. The images changed, showing Navigator Zixhai and his detailed star charts. The Zephyrian had spent weeks working with Earth scientists, sharing everything he knew about the galaxy's current state. The picture he painted was both terrifying and hopeful. The galaxy has just emerged from a 300-year war, Santos continued. 5 major powers control most of inhabited space, but they are weakened and exhausted. Hundreds of smaller species exist in the margins, many of them struggling to survive. President Chen of the Asian Federation leaned forward. What exactly is Navigator Zixai proposing? Santos looked around the room. He believes humanity could make a difference. Our technology may be primitive, but we have something the galaxy lacks, unity born from overcoming our differences. He thinks we could help bring stability to the outer regions. The Brazilian representative stood up. With respect, Secretary General, this sounds incredibly dangerous. These powers have weapons that can destroy planets. What could we possibly do against such forces? It was Director James Wright of the North American Space Command who answered. We've been analyzing the alien technology that Navigator Zixai shared with us. Yes, they're centuries ahead of us in many areas, but there are surprising gaps in their capabilities. The hologram shifted to show technical diagrams. They've forgotten how to build simple, reliable systems. Their technology is powerful but complex, requiring massive infrastructure to maintain. Our systems are crude but robust. More importantly, we've never stopped improving our military technology. General Reyes of the European Defense Union nodded. Our war colleges have been studying the galactic conflict data. These powers fought a very different kind of war than humans do. They relied on overwhelming technological superiority and massive set-piece battles. They never developed the kind of adaptive, guerrilla-style tactics that humans excel at. Santos saw the shift in the room's mood. The initial fear was giving way to something else, the same stubborn determination that had carried humanity through every crisis in its history. There's something else, she said. Navigator Zixai has agreed to help us make contact with some of the smaller species in the neutral zones. Many of them are looking for protection and allies. They're not interested in conquest, they just want to survive. The Japanese representative spoke up. What would be our first step? Project Prometheus, Santos replied. The hologram changed again, showing shipyard designs and manufacturing projections. We begin the largest industrial mobilization in human history. Every nation contributes according to their capabilities. We build a fleet capable of reaching the neutral zones and establishing a presence there. The scale of what she was proposing was staggering. Converting civilian manufacturing to spacecraft production would require unprecedented cooperation between nations that had been rivals for centuries. It would mean redirecting resources from Earth's rebuilding efforts after the climate wars to space-based infrastructure. But as Santos looked around the room, she saw something remarkable happening. The old divisions that had defined human politics for generations were falling away in the face of a common purpose. The next 6 months transformed Earth beyond recognition. Factory complexes that had built automobiles and consumer electronics retooled to produce spacecraft components. Universities that had competed for research funding began collaborating on reverse engineering alien technology. Most surprisingly, military forces that had spent decades preparing to fight each other started training for joint operations in space. Dr. Sarah Kim found herself leading a team of thousands at the newly established Xenotechnology Research Center in Nevada. Working with Navigator Zixai, they had made breakthrough after breakthrough in adapting alien concepts to human manufacturing capabilities. The key insight, she explained to a gathering of world leaders, is that we don't need to match their technology exactly. We need to build systems that work with our strengths. She showed them the first prototype of a human-designed starship equipped with adapted alien technology. It was smaller than the great vessels of the galactic powers, but it was fast, reliable, and could be built in a fraction of the time. The Zephyrians take decades to build a single warship, she said. We can build 10 of these in the same time, using automated systems and modular construction. Meanwhile, Captain Elena Vasquez had been promoted to admiral and tasked with developing Earth's space military doctrine. She worked closely with Navigator Zixai to understand the strategic situation in the galaxy. The 5 powers think in terms of controlling star systems, Zixai explained during one of their planning sessions. They establish bases, claim territory, and defend it with massive fleets. But there are millions of uninhabited systems, asteroid fields, and dead worlds that they ignore. Elena studied the star charts with growing excitement, so we could establish hidden bases throughout the galaxy without them noticing. Exactly. And more importantly, we could use those bases to help species that the powers have forgotten. There are refugee populations scattered throughout the outer rim, mining colonies cut off from their homeworlds, research stations that have been abandoned. These people need help, but the great powers consider them too small to matter. Elena smiled. It was exactly the kind of asymmetric strategy that humans excelled at. Instead of challenging the powers directly, they would work around them, building a network of allies among the forgotten and abandoned. The first human expedition beyond Earth's solar system launched 9 months after the Endeavor's return. It consisted of 12 ships carrying supplies, medical equipment, and defensive weapons. Their destination was a system navigator Zixai had identified as hosting a refugee population of Cytherian miners whose homeworld had been destroyed in the war. When Admiral Elena Vasquez and her small fleet arrived at the Cytherian asteroid base, they found exactly what Zixai had described. 3,000 beings living in harsh conditions, struggling to extract enough resources to survive. Their equipment was failing, their population was declining, and they had given up hope of rescue. The Cytherians were small, furry creatures with large eyes and delicate hands perfect for precision work. They had been mining rare elements for the Techno Syndicate when their world was caught in a crossfire between Syndicate and crystalline forces. The planet had been shattered, and the survivors had fled to this remote asteroid field. Elena's translator worked overtime as the Cytherian leader. An elderly female named Tiskra expressed amazement at the human offer of aid. "You want nothing in return?" Tiskra asked. "No tribute, no exclusive mining rights, no military service?" "We want friendship," Elena replied simply. "We want to help you rebuild. In return, maybe you can teach us about asteroid mining and help us understand this part of the galaxy." Over the following weeks, human engineers worked alongside Cytherian miners to repair their equipment and improve their living conditions. Human doctors treated diseases that had been killing Cytherian children. Human teachers shared knowledge while learning about Cytherian culture and technology. But most importantly, human diplomats began reaching out to other isolated populations in the region. They offered the same deal to everyone: protection, aid, and friendship in exchange for cooperation and mutual defense. Word began to spread through the galactic underground networks. There was a new species operating in the neutral zones. They didn't conquer or exploit. They helped. They protected the weak and asked for nothing but friendship in return. Meanwhile, on Earth, the mobilization continued to accelerate. The success of the first mission had energized the planet. Nations that had never trusted each other were working together with unprecedented efficiency. Old enemies were becoming partners in humanity's greatest adventure. Navigator Zixai watched it all with growing amazement. In his centuries of life, he had never seen anything like it. The galactic powers built empires through conquest and maintained them through fear. Humanity was building something entirely different, a network of voluntary allies united by shared values rather than shared subjugation. "Your species is very strange," he told Elena during one of their planning sessions for the second wave of expeditions. "Most races learn to be careful when they discover the galaxy's dangers. You learn to be bolder." Elena grinned. "Maybe that's because we've never learned to accept that things can't be changed. On Earth, we have a saying, the best defense is a good offense. But we're learning that sometimes the best offense is helping other people defend themselves." As the first year of human galactic presence drew to a close, the statistics were impressive. Earth had established friendly contact with over 30 minor species. Admiral Korthvin of the Crystalline Collective studied the intelligence reports with growing irritation. His diamond-faceted face reflected the holographic displays in painful rainbow patterns as data scrolled past his multifaceted eyes. "Explain to me again how a species we have never heard of is operating in 17 different neutral zones," he said to his intelligence chief. Commander Velthar, a younger crystalline with fewer facets but sharper focus, manipulated the holographic display. "The initial reports came from our border monitoring station 6 months ago. Unknown energy signatures in the Cytherian asteroid field. We dismissed them as residual radiation from the war. And now we know better. These humans have established contact with at least 30 minor species. They're providing medical aid, technical assistance, and defensive capabilities. More troubling, they're doing it without demanding tribute or allegiance." Admiral Korthvin's crystalline structure resonated with displeasure. creating a sound like breaking glass. Impossible. No species provides aid without seeking advantage. What is their real purpose? That's what concerns our analysts. If this is some elaborate deception, we cannot determine the end goal. Their behavior appears genuinely altruistic. Altruism is a luxury of the weak. Show me their military capabilities. The display shifted to show images of human spacecraft. They were smaller than crystalline vessels with simple, angular designs that looked almost primitive compared to the flowing crystal ships of the collective. Their technology is crude but effective, Velthar reported. They appear to have reverse-engineered Zephyrian systems with remarkable speed. Their ships are mass-produced using automated manufacturing techniques we have never seen before. How many ships? Current estimates suggest they have built over 200 vessels in less than 2 years. Production appears to be accelerating. Admiral Korthvin's resonance shifted to a higher, more dangerous frequency. 200 ships was more than some of the great powers possessed after the devastating war. For an unknown species to achieve such numbers so quickly was troubling. What do the other powers say about this situation? That is where things become truly concerning. We have shared our intelligence with the other 4 powers. They all report similar observations in their border regions. Across the galaxy, similar conversations were taking place in the command centers of the other great powers. Hive Queen Sisnarath of the Vorthak floated in her biochamber, surrounded by thousands of her drone children. Her massive form pulsed with bioluminescent patterns as she processed reports from across the swarm's territory. The humans reproduce at an alarming rate, reported Drone Commander Zektoth. Their population growth exceeds all galactic norms. But more concerning is their effect on other species. Explain. The Hive Queen's mental voice touched all her children simultaneously. They form alliances instead of hierarchies. Species that join with them maintain their independence. This is contrary to all natural order. The weak should serve the strong. Queen Sisnarath's pattern shifted to deep red, indicating serious thought. What threat do they pose to the swarm? Direct military threat is minimal, but their influence grows daily. They have begun brokering peace agreements between species that have fought for generations. If this pattern continues, they could unite the neutral zones against us. Unacceptable. The minor species exist to serve the great powers. Order them to cease this alliance building immediately. My queen, we have tried. They do not respond to our diplomatic communications. They claim the minor species have the right to choose their own associations. The queen's bioluminescence flared to brilliant orange, the color of rage. In her centuries of existence, she had never encountered such defiance from lesser beings. Meanwhile, in the sterile corridors of a techno-syndicate command station, Director Prime XK7 processed similar reports through its vast network of sensors and databases. Probability analysis indicates a 73.6% chance that these humans represent a significant threat to syndicate interests. Reported Subdirector YN3. Define threat parameters. XK7 replied in perfectly modulated synthetic tones. Their rapid technological advancement suggests they will achieve parity with syndicate capabilities within 23 standard years. Their industrial capacity grows exponentially. Most concerning, they demonstrate problem-solving abilities that exceed predictive models. Specify. Observation. Humans encounter a problem they have never seen before. Expected response, cautious study and gradual adaptation. Actual response. Immediate creative solution using available resources. This pattern repeats across all observed scenarios. Director Prime XK7's optical sensors flickered as it processed this information. Assessment. Humans represent a chaos variable that could destabilize established galactic order. Confirmed. Additionally, their alliance building threatens syndicate resource acquisition from neutral zone mining operations. Solution. Recommend immediate intervention to prevent further expansion of human influence. Even the Psionic Federation, with their vast mental networks, found the humans disturbing. Hype Psion Velkaran floated in his meditation chamber, his elongated skull crackling with psychic energy as he communed with the collective consciousness of his people. The mental voices of 1,000 Federation Scions spoke as one. The humans resist mental influence. Their minds are chaotic, unpredictable. When we attempt to read their thoughts, we find only determination and hope. These emotions are dangerous. How so? Velkaran asked through the mental link. Hope is contagious. It spreads from species to species through their alliance network. The minor races begin to believe they can resist our dominance. This threatens the natural order of psychic hierarchy. Velkaron's psychic aura darkened. Have you attempted to influence their leaders directly? We tried. Their admiral, Elena Vasquez, possesses unusual mental defenses. When we touched her mind, we found something unexpected. What? She genuinely believes in her mission. There is no deception, no hidden agenda. She truly wants to help the galaxy's forgotten peoples. This sincerity makes her immune to our standard manipulation techniques. The collective psychic voices grew troubled. More concerning, her sincerity is infectious. Species that interact with humans begin to develop similar mental patterns. They become resistant to our influence. Finally, even the exhausted Zephyrian Empire took notice. Admiral Theclon, the same being who had signed the Treaty of Endless Stars, received a priority communication from his intelligence services. Admiral, we have a situation. The humans have made contact with Navigator Zixhai. Teclon's scaled hide rippled with concern. Zixhai? He was lost during the final battles. We assumed he was dead. He survived and has been working with the humans for over 2 years. Our sources indicate he has provided them with detailed intelligence about galactic politics and technology. What do they want? That's the problem, sir. They don't seem to want anything for themselves. They're helping refugee populations, providing medical aid, and defending minor species from pirates and raiders. They're doing it for free. Admiral Teclon was quiet for a long moment. In his 3 centuries of life, he had never encountered such behavior. Are they building an empire? Not in any recognizable sense. They establish bases but share control with local populations. They provide military protection, but don't demand political submission. It's unlike anything in our historical records. What threat do they pose to the empire? Direct threat appears minimal, but their activities are destabilizing the established order. Minor species are beginning to believe they have alternatives to serving the great powers. It was this final report that prompted Admiral Theclon to send a priority message to the other 4 powers. For the first time since the Treaty of Endless Stars was signed, the great powers agreed to an emergency council session. The meeting took place at the neutral station where the peace treaty had been signed. The same delegates who had ended the War of 5 Hegemonies now gathered to discuss a new threat none of them had anticipated. The situation is clear, Admiral Korthvan announced. This human species represents a fundamental threat to galactic stability. Hive Queen Sisunarath's bioluminescent patterns pulsed in agreement. They corrupt the natural order. The weak should serve the strong. This alliance building threatens everything we have built. Director Prime XK7's optical sensors focused on the tactical displays. Probability models indicate that human influence will continue expanding unless immediate action is taken. Hypsion Velkaran's mental voice touched all their minds. More dangerous than their military capabilities is their effect on the collective psyche of the galaxy. They offer something we cannot compete with: hope. Admiral Teclon looked around the table at his ancient enemies. They helped save Navigator Zixhai's life. They have shown kindness to our people. How can we justify action against them? Because kindness is weakness, Queen Sisunarath replied. And weakness is contagious. If we allow this to continue, the minor species will believe they can challenge our authority. The Queen is correct, Director Prime XK7 added. Our statistical models show that continued human expansion will result in the collapse of current power structures within 50 years. Admiral Korthvan's crystalline form rang with determination. Admiral Elena Vasquez stood on the bridge of the UES Defiance, watching the largest fleet in galactic history approach human space. 2,000 ships from 5 different powers moved in perfect formation, their combined firepower enough to sterilize entire star systems. Any reasonable military commander would have ordered immediate retreat. Elena smiled. Signal the fleet. She ordered her communications officer. Operation Revelation is now active. Lieutenant Chen, now her senior tactical officer, looked up from his console. Admiral, the combined fleet is still 6 hours out. Are you sure we shouldn't wait? Chen, we've been waiting for 3 years, Elena replied. It's time to show them what human strength really means. Across the galaxy, hidden bases that the great powers had never detected suddenly came alive. Asteroid mining stations revealed themselves to be fully armed defense platforms. Supposedly empty systems lit up with massive fleet signatures. Most shocking of all, ships began emerging from hyperspace in formations that should have been impossible. Admiral Korthvin watched his tactical display in growing confusion as enemy contact reports flooded in. "How many ships are we facing?" he demanded. His intelligence officer's crystalline face flickered with uncertainty. "Sir, current count shows over 800 human vessels." "But that's impossible. Our intelligence indicated they had barely 200 ships. Could our estimates have been wrong?" "Not this wrong, Admiral. These ships, they're coming from everywhere. Hidden bases in dead systems, camouflaged stations in asteroid fields, even mobile shipyards we never detected. On the Vorthak command bioship, Hive Queen Cisnarath's luminescent pattern shifted to deep purple, the color of profound confusion. Her drone children brought report after report of human fleet movements that made no tactical sense. "They're not concentrating their forces," reported drone commander Zektoth. "Human ships are scattered across hundreds of systems, but they're moving in coordination. How is this possible without a central command structure?" Queen Cisnarath's mental voice touched every mind in her swarm. "Perhaps they have developed new communication technology." "No, my queen. Analysis of their signals shows they're using relatively primitive quantum entanglement networks. Yet somehow they're coordinating fleet movements across the entire galaxy with perfect timing. What the Vorthak couldn't understand was something uniquely human, the ability to trust subordinate commanders to make independent decisions while working toward a common goal. Every human ship captain had been trained to think tactically and strategically, to adapt their plans based on local conditions while maintaining overall mission objectives. Director Prime XK7 of the Techno Syndicate was running calculations at maximum processing speed, trying to make sense of what his sensors were detecting. Error: human fleet composition does not match expected parameters. Specify error, requested Subdirector YN3. Observation: human ships include vessels of unknown design, some incorporating technologies we have never encountered. Additional observation: several ships in the human fleet are not of human construction. Explain: analysis indicates that human forces include refitted Zephyrian vessels, modified Catherian mining ships, and what appear to be entirely new hybrid designs. They have been building a combined fleet using technologies from multiple species. The truth was even more remarkable than the Syndicate realized. For 3 years, human engineers had been working alongside dozens of allied species, sharing knowledge and developing new technologies that combined the best aspects of each civilization's capabilities. The result was a fleet unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. HFY and Velkaran of the Psionic Federation struggled to penetrate the mental barriers surrounding the human fleet. "I cannot read their intentions," he reported to his fellow Scions. "Their minds are shielded, but not by technology." "Then how?" asked the collective consciousness. "By certainty. They know exactly what they're fighting for, and that knowledge protects them from mental intrusion. But more disturbing, I detect thousands of non-human minds among their fleet. Species we thought were conquered or destroyed are fighting alongside the humans. Impossible. How could they have assembled such a coalition without our knowledge?" Velkaran's psychic aura darkened. "Because we weren't paying attention to species we considered beneath notice. The humans weren't just building ships, they were building hope." The first actual combat began in the Kepler 442 system, where Captain Elena Vasquez had first encountered Navigator Zixai years earlier. A crystalline advance force of 50 ships encountered what they expected to be a small human patrol. Instead, they found 200 vessels waiting for them, humans, Catherians, Zephyrians, and a dozen other species fighting in perfect coordination. The battle lasted less than an hour. Not a single allied ship was lost while the crystalline force was completely destroyed. But the real shock came when Admiral Korthvin received the casualty reports. The crystalline crews hadn't been killed. They had been captured and were being offered medical treatment. "They're treating our wounded?" Admiral Korthvin asked in confusion. "Yes, sir, and they're broadcasting offers of amnesty to any crystalline forces that wish to surrender. They're promising fair treatment and eventual repatriation." It was a concept so foreign to galactic warfare that the crystalline admiral couldn't process it. For 3 centuries, the great powers had fought wars of extermination. The idea of showing mercy to enemies was literally incomprehensible. The pattern repeated across the galaxy. In system after system, the combined fleets of the 5 powers found themselves outnumbered and outmaneuvered by an alliance they had never imagined possible. But more confusing than their military defeats was the humans' response to victory. Every battle ended with offers of surrender, medical aid for the wounded, and promises of safe passage home. Human communication broadcasts didn't threaten conquest or demand submission. Instead, they offered something unprecedented, a choice. Admiral Theklan of the Zephyrian Empire was the first to understand what was really happening. As his forces faced a human-led coalition in the Rigel sector, he received a personal communication from Admiral Elena Vasquez. Admiral Theklan, I know you signed the peace treaty that ended the Great War. I know you're tired of fighting. Your crews are tired of fighting. This doesn't have to continue. Theklan studied the human admiral's face on his screen. She looked older than when she had first rescued navigator Zixhai, but her eyes still held the same determined kindness that had impressed him in the intelligence reports. What are you offering? He asked. A galaxy where species help each other instead of conquering each other, where conflicts are resolved through cooperation instead of warfare, where the strong protect the weak instead of exploiting them. The other powers will never accept such terms. Elena's expression grew sad. I know, but your crews might. As if on cue, signals began coming in from Zephyrian ships throughout the fleet. Captains who had spent their lives fighting wars they didn't believe in were asking for permission to stand down. Entire squadrons were requesting sanctuary with the human forces. Admiral Theklan looked around his bridge at officers who had served with him for decades. He saw the same weariness in their eyes that he felt in his own hearts. How many more wars would they have to fight to maintain an order that brought nothing but suffering? All Zephyrian vessels, he announced over the fleet communication channel. You have my permission to make your own choice. Within hours, over half of the Zephyrian fleet had defected to the human alliance. The pattern spread to other species and other fleets. Fourth-act drones, cut off from their queen's mental control by human psychic dampening fields, discovered they could think for themselves and chose freedom over servitude. Techno-syndicate androids offered the chance to develop beyond their programming, abandoned their corporate masters. Even some crystalline vessels, whose crews had grown tired of their rigid hierarchical society, joined the growing coalition. The final confrontation came at the ancient Nexus Gate, where the War of Five Hegemonies had ended years earlier. The remaining loyal forces of the great powers, now reduced to fewer than 500 ships, made their last stand against a coalition that had grown to over 3,000 vessels. But instead of a battle, they found Admiral Elena Vasquez waiting for them with a small diplomatic escort. You've lost, Admiral Korthvin transmitted. Your primitive species cannot hope to govern a galaxy. Elena's response was broadcast to every ship in both fleets. You're right. We can't govern a galaxy. That's why we're not going to try. Then what do you want? We want every species to govern itself. We want the strong to help the weak become stronger. We want conflicts resolved through discussion instead of destruction. We want a galaxy where no one has to be afraid. Queensis Nareth's bioluminescent patterns flared with rage. Impossible. The weak exist to serve the strong. It is the natural order. Maybe, Elena replied calmly. But maybe it's time for a new natural order. The standoff continued for 3 days. During that time, human representatives met with crew members from the remaining ships of the great powers. They didn't offer bribes or threats. They offered something simpler and more powerful, hope for a better future. One by one, ships began switching sides. Not through coercion, but through choice.